So, hello everyone. We have today with us uh, Juarez, and he's going to talk to us about blockchain. We were waiting for this talk for quite some time, and we could get Juarez this time. So, hope you like it. He's going to talk about Azure blockchain service for developers. So, the floor is yours, Juarez.
Thanks a lot, Ricardo. Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen first here. Okay, can you see it?
It's loading. I can see it now.
All right. Perfect. So let's talk about Azure blockchain for developers and blockchain technology, something that I'm passionate about. But first of all, I would like to invite you to scan this QR code here because we've prepared some technical resources related to Azure as well as blockchain on Azure. So it's a good idea for you. Also, in case you want, you can subscribe to our newsletter. And I do advise you to also follow our Twitter handle in Ireland, MSDevIRL, because we announce several events and technical workshops, hands-on labs, and things like that. And we use the handle as one of the main channels in the connection with our community in Ireland. My name is Juarez Jr. I work for Microsoft as an Azure developer audience lead in Ireland. Here is my email address as well as my Twitter and Medium handle. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn in case you want. Without further ado, let's explore Azure for blockchain for developers. So first, let's talk a little bit about digital transformation and what is digital transformation, IT modernization, you know, and there are many discussions considering this topic at the moment. And all the organizations, they are actually modernizing their internal business processes and also in order to execute and expedite the internal business processes, the use cases, identify ways, for example, implement a lean approach to business process execution. IT transformation and digital modernization and transformation, they are all important factors that you should consider. So I'm providing here some information considering how business leaders and the companies they are perceiving and also envisioning the way they should transform their internal and modernize their internal digital processes. And blockchain is quite important considering the technologies that will support this digital transformation approach to your business. So beyond blockchain, we have things like AI, for example, IoT, with the Internet of Things. You can, you know, when you consider the synergy and what you can achieve when you have a solution, for example, where you are applying those three main technologies, the so-called Trinity in exponential technologies, artificial intelligence, IoT, and blockchain. And it's really interesting because there are so many solutions that you can create out of that in order to transform business processes and I would say achieve the competitive advantage that you need. You know how first the business market is nowadays, and with the changes imposed by COVID and digital transformation is important because this transition to many, I would say, brick and mortar businesses, for example, are going online now. They are moving to implement an online strategy and approach considering their business needs. So all those technologies are really important, and blockchain, of course, is one of the key ones. So blockchain can play this key role considering the implementation of digital transformation. But at the end of the day, blockchain is not only that, but a kind of data store. It's a database, you know. It's not like the traditional databases like relational databases or NoSQL databases, for example. It stores data. It's a kind of middleware somehow, but it has several different characteristics, for example, because the data is stored in a ledger, and this ledger is shared okay? And also it uses cryptography and security to implement, I would say, an additional security layer that can deliver trust and implement what we can call a single and shared source of truth. Common scenarios for blockchain, you know, anything that you need to track changes, for example. So all the different business solutions that have to track an asset, and I can talk about a car, I would say a spare part, you know, a mechanical part. I can talk about a mortgage contract. I can talk about a container. Anything that can be considered an asset can be tracked with blockchain. And of course, as I said, it will help you implement and expedite your workflows and the business processes. You can combine that with IoT, for example. Let's say for a given container, you can also record the location-based information. You can capture the location information for, I would say, a remote GPS. You can read an RFID tag, for example. And then you can have all that data stored on chain with blockchain. And beyond this distribution, the collective ownership of data, the single source of truth, and also this distributed and common ledger, because all members and all participants in a blockchain network, they share this common ledger. You can also implement interesting characteristic called immutability. And that's the difference, because I said blockchain is a kind of database, but a different one. Because with the relational databases, or I would say flat files, any type of data storage and database, you can actually update and modify the data. But with blockchain, the data is immutable. Okay, so actually when you need to logically modify a data, because physically there's no way to alter it, you can compute a new block with many transactions, and then you can append a block to this chain of blocks. And that's what blockchain is. So on top of that, as I said, we have a distribution, we have this data storage, you know, in a ledger that is, I would say, reliable. It implements transactions in a distributed way. It has, I would say, security features like authentication, authorization, auditing, the AAA in security. You have the implementation of security considering both data at rest and the storage, but data in motion as well, you know, when you are using different communication protocols. And the blockchain network is composed by several members then, as I explained. Depending on the blockchain model or the blockchain approach or a category, because there are different ways that you can classify a blockchain network. We can consider them permissioned or permissionless networks. The permissionless networks, they are, examples are, for example, Ethereum and Bitcoin, where you don't need to be authorized to join that network, you know. You need to acquire, I would say, hardware resources, allocate a server, or buy a hardware box of server, you know, install the mining software, and then you can join the network without asking for permission, no certificates, no key stores, and identity exchange, for example. But for the permissioned networks, actually, there are different roles depending on the network and the protocol that we are talking about. We have different ones like Hyperledger, Ethereum, and Corda, and so on. But when you join a permissioned network, actually you need to be authorized too. So the network founder, one of the, I would say, founding members, can give you a certificate and some configuration files that can be used to actually join what we call a consortium, okay? And when you have a consortium then, in order to achieve the data reliability and the consistency, because we are talking about a distributed network, you know, but we have a shared and a common, you know, ledger. So all the different members and the nodes, they see the very same ledger in the data there. So the transaction approach and the scheme and the topology, there are many things that can influence that. But at the end of the day, we have what we call a consensus algorithm. And depending on this algorithm, the nodes, they will receive the input data. That we run what we call smart contracts. Those are software components, for example, with business logic, like any other software component. But the smart contracts, they are smart because they, depending on the way that you deploy a smart contract and you instantiate it, it becomes, I would say, an autonomous contract that can actually watch the context and provided that you send the expected data set to a given smart contract, it can react and execute business logic autonomously, and perform a blockchain transaction and modify this ledger, And with that, the concept is actually quite simple. The underlying technologies and the infrastructure, there are many different protocols, things like, and also technologies like containers, Kubernetes, protocols like GPRC, and so on. But at the end of the day, the abstraction that we can use depends on your choice in terms of a blockchain protocol first and platform. And there are three different ways that you can approach your blockchain solution. You can first, considering the three different classifications in the scope of cloud computing, in case you want to implement your blockchain solution and use IaaS, infrastructure as a service, with VMs, for example, we have a number of different open source projects and components, protocols that can be leveraged to achieve that, but the complexity is really, really high. It's not easy because you have to learn a number of different command line tools and learn about the different components and the way they interact, and you have to control the entire configuration, So I'm talking about a number of IP addresses, ports, and configurations, certificates, key stores, and so on. So it's possible to implement blockchain and I would say from scratch, but it's complex. This infrastructure can become a separate project. So that's why it's important for you to consider perhaps an additional abstraction and layer. So there are several services that can, I would say, be implemented with Azure at the PaaS level, platform as a service. And you can, for example, use VMs from the marketplace, for example, but you can also implement, let's say, the Hyperledger protocol with the Azure Kubernetes service, AKS. So it gives you more agility in terms of container orchestration. Let's say that you want to implement a blockchain network with 100 different members. For example, you have an explosion considering the number of nodes and all those configuration items that I talked about that we will have to manage, okay? But the ultimate abstraction is actually what we call BaaS, or blockchain as a service. And we do have a service, and it is called Azure Blockchain Service, where we have and we offer some protocols, and that's what we can call a managed blockchain solution. Okay, it's like managed Kubernetes, for example, and there are a number of different startups and companies exploring that, but it's Microsoft. So first, we use the very, very same Hyperledger, Corda, Ethereum, and different source code and projects to implement the service in alignment with those specifications and the projects. So we don't modify the upstream components, so that will allow you to actually develop and adhere to a given standard open source project and deploy that to an Azure environment with no issues at all. Beyond this service and the cloud side of it, we also have what we call the Azure Blockchain Workbench. It's a combination of several different services for IoT, for example, messaging, and security databases that you can provision as an integrated solution, and the Azure blockchain service is also provisioned along with those components. So it expedites your development because you have all the proper connectors, the integration. You can ingest data from IoT, for example, receive a message from a different message-oriented middleware. All the integration options, they are there. So it's a kind of accelerator, very interesting one. And the last one is the Azure Blockchain Developer Kit. We have an extension for Visual Studio Code, and that's great. We'll have a demo here today, and I want to present it. And there are also several code samples with examples. For example, let's say that you want to implement something that uses blockchain and the ABS Azure Blockchain Service and Twilio. We do have a code sample for Twilio message, for example, that you can reuse. Okay, so it's one more accelerator, and the tool is great because, as I said, remember, it's not so easy to integrate, manage, and also orchestrate all the blockchain components that are required at the platform or infrastructure level. Um, so these tools here, the blockchain service, it will abstract all this complexity. On top of that, we have several specific dashboards from where you can get all the information about transactions, blocks, uh, all the metrics, in a user-friendly way. And you don't need to play with, I would say, low-level command line tools. The workbench, as I explained, for integration and to integrate different Azure services. And the developer kit is the tool because it's about the IDE, VS Code, the agility, all the encapsulators that I talked about, and actual coding. So let's move here. Um, just a quick recap here then. As I said, blockchain is a secure, shared, and distributed ledger. Okay, so all the members in all the nodes, they have a copy of this ledger. It's immutable, the data there, so provided that you have consensus and all the members, they agree that the given data input and the smart contract business logic, they are all correct and addressed. Okay, you have the transaction in a new block as part of this result, and once inserted, it becomes an immutable record for every transaction. And it helps with something that is really important in the scope of all blockchain solutions: traceability. One more characteristic that we have in blockchain, in the supply chain and logistics solutions, for example, they use traceability actually to have more visibility in terms of your sourcing of products, raw materials, medicines, food, whatever. You can use IoT, for example, and a temperature sensor to measure the temperature of a given thing. I talked about security, the distributed nature of blockchain. Interesting to say, depending on the protocol, let's say that you have 100 nodes participating in a blockchain network and you have an outage in 40 nodes, they become, I would say, faulty nodes, that's not a problem because the network, all the other nodes, they have the very same copy of a given ledger, so they can process your transactions. So with blockchain, it's more than, I would say, traditional distributed computing with clusters, database clusters, application server clusters like, Java app servers and so on, because you really eliminate any single point of failure. It's a different network. So that's why we call this blockchain network the Web 3.0 or the new world operating system, because we are talking about new infrastructure with more security and the implementation of several architectural non-functional requirements, I would say, in an optimal way. There are some problems in terms of scalability depending on the consensus algorithm and the solution and the network that we're talking about. But overall, we can say that blockchain and the different protocols and the way that this technology is evolving, everything is moving towards a very powerful network in the near future. Okay, I talked about this ledger here, and the entire network and all the members, they have the very same ledger and the very same copy. That's important, so don't forget about that. Uh, Blockchain, okay, and the use cases. In order to help you decide if blockchain is a good candidate for your solution, there are several things, for example, that you should consider beyond the functional requirements and also the traditional non-functional architecture ones. Um, and there are things, for example, that in some situations it makes more sense to keep your relational database, for example, or implement messaging with I would say MQ or Java message service, whatever. So it's just important to say that blockchain is a good technology, but on the other side, it's not a silver bullet at all. Okay, but let's talk a little bit more about the Azure Blockchain Service. Okay, as I said, it helps you to deploy a managed blockchain network in a few clicks. Okay, so just a couple of pages and one simple wizard. Governance is really important, as I said, because this transformation and the governance, IT and infrastructure governance, that's really complex. So it's good in case you want to use a cloud environment and Microsoft can, I would say, manage everything for you, because it's easy, for example, to use open source components, but you need, for example, to implement the proper security governance, because open source, you are, I would say, running the risk of, I would say, having something similar to what happened to a company in the USA, for example, where they used Java struts framework with a security hole, and the hackers, they exploited that. So when you have a company taking care of all the details and the underlying infrastructure, uh, there's no problem related to that, because it's their concern. They manage security for the entire environment, and Azure is quite strong in terms of security, the implementation of several different regulations and so on. We have a number of tools, as I talked about, and all the accelerators that you can use to implement and connect with the blockchain service. And integration of off-chain data is also important. Depending on the open source protocol like Ethereum, there's a concept where they call the integrators uh, oracles. Okay, and those oracles, those components, they are kind of integration adapters, or there are several different architectural ways that you can consider them and design patterns. But at the end of the day, with Microsoft, as I said, you can just use a number of different possibilities here. Logic apps, you can use Power Apps, you can use APIs, API management, you can use the IoT hub, and so data ingestion is not a problem. Because remember, as I said, blockchain is a data store, a kind of middleware component, and with no data, blockchain is useless. Okay, you can have the proper smart contracts in place, but with no data, and the proper data inputs in the context, uh, there's no value at all. Okay. The management dashboards that I talked about, you will have a glimpse of that shortly. I talked about the implementation of different business processes with blockchain, but when you consider all the business verticals and marketed niches, manufacturing, retail, healthcare, digital government, for example, banking and capital markets, and so on, supply chain management, logistics. Blockchain, you can look and analyze the business processes and the use cases, and those places where you normally identify, waste, depending on your methodology and the approach. For example, you can also identify places where you need more security, you need to remove intermediaries, you need to, I would say, expedite the process by having mutual authentication and collaboration, and expedite the security interactions, for example. Um, and for all those different business verticals, there are ways that you can actually modernize and use blockchain as one of those pillars in the scope of those emerging technologies that I talked about. One example here, for example, is Starbucks, and this is a very good one because it's related to supply chain and what we call food provenance. So Starbucks, they use it blockchain to identify the coffee beans and track the coffee beans from farm to table with a solution for different players and participants in a given blockchain network here, including giving the end user, the customer, the opportunity to scan and inspect the entire traceability, considering the quality and the origin of a given coffee bean in the product. So you can see here, several different participants and the business process. In this case here, we can consider, the product as the asset to be tracked, as I explained. The business entities, they are interested in different information here, depending on the stage and the phase. But you can see how useful and the different things that blockchain can do in the scope of this simple scenario here. Okay, so it's just a matter of thinking about how you can apply blockchain to your solutions. That's a way. Blockchain on Microsoft Azure. So our focus is to deliver a complete developer experience in terms of blockchain, the platform, the cloud, the tools, the different programming languages, and the extensions for Visual Studio Code, code samples, and so on. Documentation is strong. Microsoft Learn with tracks related to blockchain. The development kit, as I explained, the extension, quite useful and powerful. I'll have a demo here to present it quickly. The workbench, interesting in case you need to integrate your data from several different data sources, disparate ones. Here you can see, for example, different components represented as part of that workbench, IoT Hub, as I said, Key Vault, SQL database, and so on, and the different blockchain protocols, blockchain service, and Ethereum here in this example. Not to mention also integration with GitHub, of course, and DevOps with GitHub, so you can also build a CI/CD pipeline, have the, I would say, the complete modernization of your infrastructure, not only for the target workload and the target deployment environment, but the entire experience, for developers as well, with the right tools, CI/CD pipelines, DevOps, and continuous integration deliveries with quality and so on. As I explained, the purpose with the service like the one that I'm going to present here now, the Azure Blockchain Service, is to abstract all the different blocks that we have here, like identity federations, manual deployment steps, data integration, data connectors, all the complexity of data integration, data transformation, API management, security and key management. And with that, you can focus on writing business logic, okay? With the right tools, you just go there, you implement your smart contract, and that's it. You can deploy with a number of clicks. You can avoid all the complexity when you consider the different components and factors that you have to consider for blockchain development projects. Okay, so let's have a quick demo here now. So I have here one environment where first you can see the Azure portal. I created a previous blockchain member for us here, this one, okay, and I deployed a smart contract as well. So here I have this member here, okay, it's a quorum member. You can see the protocol here with the different information, for example, the dashboards with the transactions and the information, the availability here. And just to show you how easy it is to create one member, for example, you click create blockchain here, Azure blockchain service, okay? And then you provide the information, your subscription as usual on Azure, the resource group that you want this member to belong to, you know, the region, consortium details, the protocol, for example, quorum here, for example, in that case, considering the node that I created earlier today. The consortium, for example, give your consortium a name. Remember, this is permissioned blockchain DAM. The member name, the name for this member here that you are creating, your choice in terms of, you know, the shape and the computing capacity, you know, for the cloud component. Transaction node, for example, because Quorum we have a node responsible for this transaction side of this processing and the solution, and that's it. Okay, you review and you create. And you can then use VS Code from as a tool to actually interact, deploy and interact with a smart contract. So let's have a look at that. I'm gonna show first one project that I created here, just to give you, I would say, a quick overview of how it works. So this is VS Code. We have an extension called Azure Blockchain Dev Kit, as I said. Okay, actually, it's here, if I'm not wrong. Yes, okay, you can install it. Okay, and then you can use it to compile your smart contract. You can deploy your smart contract. You can interact with it. Okay, there are several different steps. So this sample here, for example, I will create one project from scratch as well, but just to, I would say, perform this quick demo here, we have one smart contract, and the extension is .sol. This is the language for Ethereum and Quorum Solidity. It's a kind of DSL, domain-specific language, but it's a programming language anyway. And you can create your smart contract to control a given asset, for example, okay? For this one, I added a couple of methods here because I just want to store and retrieve one information from my blockchain network and the memory there, okay? So let's have a look. In order to compile, you don't need to play with several different command line, different commands, for example, to compile. Let me show you here, for example, this is the, no, not this one. Yes, okay. This is the command that I can use to compile from the command line, but you can do everything from VS Code here. So you just click build contracts here. Okay, you can select, for example, Azure blockchain here. You can see that pretty much the same commands will appear here. So it's actually compiling the smart contract now. Okay. All right, compile successfully. Then you can deploy it to a given cloud environment. And here you can configure a connection to your blockchain. So you can see that actually the component that I have here is the very same one with the same name that I presented there, this one here, okay? This member and this consortium. So I can just click here and deploy contracts again. I select the network. There's a local development environment. You can see localhost as the IP address here. Okay, no, I want to target the one there. Okay, I want to deploy it to the cloud. Okay, there are several steps being completed here. Compilation again. Yeah, deployment started. The networking interactions, contract. Yeah, hashing and all the proper checks. Okay, it's deploying now. Perfect. It is deployed now, so we can interact with it again from the tool here. Okay, there's a smart contract interaction page. but I can also interact with it from the command line, for example. Okay, so let's say I want to call the smart contract from the command line. Okay. All right. So first I have to connect to that network from the command line. Okay, so I can use this command here. Just to give you a glimpse of how different it is to work from the command line, you can see, as usual, it's not the same experience. So that's why it's good to have a tool like VS Code and the Azure blockchain extension and to help you with the blockchain development steps. Okay, it's okay. I have the shell here now, so I can call the smart contract. Let's do it. I have one command here. Let's see. I have a message there. Perfect. Hello world. We can modify the message. Then let's say hello block.net. So if you've never seen a blockchain transaction, let's see. Okay, and now I can retrieve the information again. Perfect. So that's it. You've seen your very first real world blockchain transaction. The protocol is Quorum, and we are running blockchain on Azure. Okay. But now it's interesting maybe to show you how to create and to modify and deploy a contract from scratch. So I can also do this here. Okay, so you can select here file. Let's say open folder. Let's create, I don't know, a new folder here, BC demo. Okay. All right, so now I want to create a new Solidity project. Okay. It takes a short while because the plugin needs to load. Okay. Come on. Yeah, it's still activating the extensions. All right. Okay, so now I will create one project from scratch. Okay, modify the project, and then show to you how to connect to this blockchain member, a Quorum member running on Azure. Okay. All right. So it's loaded now. There are some issues, but I hope that works. Okay. So let me try to create again here. Create basic project. Okay. I need to select the folder, so we can select that this one here. Perfect. Okay, so it's creating my Solidity project now, right? We'll have, I would say, a bare bones project here. And by the way, all these steps here, as I said, you can follow me on Medium in case you want. And I have the tutorials with all the screenshots, the configurations, and the GitHub files, everything here. And I explain how to create a network first, and then how to create and deploy a smart contract. Okay, the same steps here. and then how you can actually interact with this smart contract. Okay, so the handle is Juarez Junior as well on Medium. So in case you are interested, you can access all the content and more. So please make sure that you can follow me over there as well. Okay, so it's still creating our project. Okay, it takes a while here, but yeah. But I can see that the structure is being created here. Let's wait a little bit more. Still have this, okay. Perfect. So we have the project here now, okay, in the same hello world, but you can see that this is just a simple bare bones smart contract, okay. The purpose of this initial introduction here, this initial presentation is not to teach Solidity, but we'll have a couple of specific presentations where we'll explore Ethereum and Quorum and the different smart contracts and the language, you know, and all the details related to that, okay? So to complement this one here, I can modify this smart contract, for example. So I think I can copy it from here, okay. I can just, for example, insert those functions there just to show you the previous demo what was actually the step, okay. So now I can compile it again, okay. Let's change here. Okay, it's compiling very first time. Perfect. Now it's the deploy phase, so let's deploy it. So now I have to create a network connection or reuse an existing one. I can reuse this one here, but I need to create a mnemonic file with some keys. This is more related to the security side of it. Okay, so yeah, I can provide a simple name here. All right, let's do it. The deployment steps have just started. Okay, let's wait a little bit to see. Meanwhile, again, as I said, I can perhaps create an additional blockchain service here. Again, just to show you how simple it is to create a blockchain instance. So again, you know, create resource, blockchain, Azure blockchain service preview. This is a subscription. I can reuse an existing resource group, maybe. Okay, this is fine. No, I want Quorum. Perfect. Consortium name, I can use it. Use this consortium name here. Okay. Member name, a new name here again. Okay, MN. Password. Let's see. Perfect. I can change it here to basic maybe. Okay, I just need one core. And my password for this transaction node, as I said. We can review and create, yeah. Perfect, it passed validation, so I can start it. Let's have a look now, because I think the smart contract is deployed. Okay, perfect. Let's see. All right, so that's it. You can see how to create a smart contract, use VS Code, connect to your remote Azure blockchain service, deploy a smart contract, and also call it from the command line. Just to finish here, Dan, the key takeaways. Um, Azure is the best cloud for blockchain. As I explained, we have the environment, we have the different protocols and different options. You can use Kubernetes, you can use VMs, you can use the Azure blockchain service, the BaaS managed blockchain, to abstract all the complexity. We have all the different Azure services and the integration. We have all the bits to support your solution, right? We have a number of partners and customers, as I presented, for example, here, the case with Starbucks. There are many, many, many different companies running our blockchain service in production at the moment. Thanks a lot. And that's pretty much everything that I have for this introduction today, Ricardo. And again, don't forget to scan the QR code so you can access the documentation for the Azure blockchain service, for example, and other, I would say, rich resources that we prepared for you. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Juarez. It was a great presentation. It's awesome to see that if you have an idea or if you are working on a concept, you can focus just on what you do best, and you can leave all the infrastructure and everything to a provider that it's trusted by. I saw NASDAQ and banks on that list of customers, so it's not just company that has a small thing. It's something that has to be really secure, and I'm pretty sure they have very exhaustive processes to select a partner or a provider, something like that. So it's definitely one way to do it, and that, by the way that you showed it, it's pretty simple to do it. So surely we'll have a try at some point. I had just two questions here. One of them was, I seen that you added a member, and does it create a new blockchain like the Genesis, or it just connect to something that already exists?
Oh, that's a great idea. Yes, when you have the permissioned networks and you create a new consortium, yes, you are creating a new chain. So you have the block zero, the Genesis block to support that consortium. Yes, but it depends on the protocol. For example, Hyperledger, when you create a new channel, you create a new chain, a new Genesis block. Block zero, but different channels, they will have different Genesis blocks,
But
so
in this
because
demo, you
that
connected.
in Hyperledger, you can use the channels to actually, and also other things like private data collection.
I think we lost.
Allow a given member to access just a portion of an asset and the associated data set, for example. Yeah, but it's an elaborate
we lost
case,
it.
but that's it. Yeah,
we lost you for a bit there. Just to so the demo that you did, you used an already created consortium, so it's just a member, it's not the.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Genesis block, it's really important when you consider not the permissioned one like here, because yes, this one that I created, it started from the Genesis block zero, so that's correct, and it aligns with the question. But for a public blockchain like Bitcoin, for example, the Genesis block started back in 2009, I guess.
Yeah.
The chain size is 200 gigabytes and something beyond that. So no, it's different. But and that's why with permissioned blockchains, like the one that I created here, you have more scalability, because every time you create a new consortium, or depending on the protocol, a different channel, you are starting from block zero. So the way that your transaction can be performed and validated, I would say that's accelerated as well, because it's a different chain size.
Okay, cool, awesome. So the other question was, and I think I already know the answer, but still, when you created the project from scratch on Visual Studio Code, the template that you used comes with that blockchain SDK, right?
That's correct. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And not only that, there are other templates for different protocols like Hyperledger, B2, also Ethereum. So yeah.
Yeah.
And not only that, remember the dev kit. There's a GitHub account from and repository from where you can get many code samples, like the Twilio one that I talked about.
Cool. Awesome. I don't know if anyone has any other questions, live questions. If not, the video will be posted on the Cork.net and Azure YouTube channel. And you can, I'll add the Medium handle, a URL for Juarez, and the Twitter, and I'm pretty sure he'll do his best to answer all your questions if you have them at some point. So I guess this is the meetup for today, and hope to see you soon. Thank you again, Juarez, and see you for the next blockchain meetup or the next
You are
topic
very
that you
welcome.
want to.
You are very
Okay.
welcome, Ricardo. Thanks a lot, indeed.
Thank
It
you.
was an absolute pleasure for me to present here today. And
It
thanks,
was
everyone.
our pleasure. Thank you. See you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.